welcome to Science Lab. The signs are happening because Jesus is coming. Every day, we are looking at some of the signs that are happening around us. In this episode, we are going to see some of the strange signs that are taking place in the sky.
Humans want to explore the farthest reaches of outer space in the eventual hopes of finding other habitable Earth-like planets. These planets could harbor life and put an end to the debate on whether or not we are alone in the universe. However, navigating to distant star systems means first leaving our own solar system. But where exactly is the boundary between our solar system and interstellar space? Today, we are answering the extraordinary question, where does the solar system end? Over the centuries, we have acquired a vast amount of knowledge about our own solar system. We have put an age to the sun, classified all the planets, charted trajectories in orbit to a precise degree, discovered the moons orbiting those planets, and even seen pictures of these other worlds. Despite this, we are still not exactly in agreement as to what the solar system is, or more specifically, where it ends. It doesn't have a clear edge or border, and deciding on one depends on what criteria you are using. Identifying a cutoff point is important to classify sizes of distant solar systems and having consistent measurements of our own. This question is made more difficult by the fact that we don't have our own solar system completely mapped yet. The Oort cloud is the farthest structure around the sun, home to billions of icy rocks that occasionally fall towards the sun and become comet. But that's purely hypothetical, as we have never seen it. Voyager 1 is the most distant spacecraft that we have in space, but even it is some 300 years away from reaching the starting point of the Oort cloud. In the meantime, both Voyager 1 and 2 have run in formations that scientists had no idea about. Back in 2007, Voyager 1 came across massive foamy magnetic bubbles about 100 million miles wide. These gigantic structures around 9 million miles from Earth came as a complete shock to scientists. They later realized that the bubbles were actually part of the sun's magnetic field. Because the sun spins, the outer edge of this field becomes crushed and knotted. The discovery shows that there could still be parts of our own solar system that we are never aware of it. Still, we have a few sets of criteria for deciding the end of the solar system. If we take it by mass, Neptune, the last planet in orbit around our sun, could be considered an ending point. Although this cut out the Kuiper belt, there is some logic behind it. The sun accounts for 99% of all the mass in the solar system itself, and the remaining 1% of mass is overwhelmingly occupied by Jupiter and the gas giants. Comparatively, there is barely any mass whatsoever past the gas giants, so it can be considered debris. Carl Sagan even once referred to Neptune as the frontier of the solar system. From a practical perspective, it makes some sense, because though there is IS-specific merits in studying asteroids, we are far more interested in the planets and their moons. However, cutting out the Kuiper belt from the solar system seems unwarranted. Despite its relatively small amount of mass, it's still home for many dwarf planets, including Pluto. To demote Pluto from planets to dwarf planets is one thing, but cutting it out to the solar system completely seems cruel. The Kuiper belt is home to the last verified satellite in orbit around our sun, and it's also massive, with a width that extends from 30 to 50 astronomical units. One astronomical unit is roughly the distance between the sun and the Earth. Many of the closer ranger comets come from the Kuiper belt, and it could be the reason that life exists on Earth in the first place. Life itself could have been seeded by a stray asteroid, and it's thought that the water arrived on Earth due to a massive frozen comets and asteroids crashing into Earth's surface. The Kuiper belt's importance in the solar system means it's arguably deserved to be included. Of course, if we define the solar system as everything captured by the sun's gravitational pull, we can extend it all the way out to the Oort cloud. The sun's pull is sometimes called the Hill or Rhodosphere, and is the region around the celestial body within which it's able to trap satellites. Adding in the Oort cloud would massively increase the size of our solar system. The Oort cloud's dimensions are unknown, but estimates puts its outer edge at up to 200,000 astronomical units from the sun. Home to trillions of objects, it's distinct from the Kuiper belt in that it's a cloud, rather than a belt extending in a giant sphere of bubble around the entire solar system. This also gives a handy cutoff point for the solar system, marking the last challenge or obstacle that travelers looking to exit our solar system would have to pass through. Beyond the Oort cloud, there isn't much of anything beside gas and dust for a long, long way. Then again, we could also define the limit of the solar system in terms of the sun's heliosphere, placing it between the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud. The heliosphere is a giant bubble of charged particles emitted by the sun, known as the solar wind. In 2012, Voyager 1 became the first man-made object to pass the edge of the heliosphere, located about 120 astronomical units away. The heliopass is the divide between the solar wind and the interstellar medium and marks a clear drop-off in the sun's influence. Voyager 1 was widely described in news outlets as having departed the solar system, despite being a long way still from the Oort cloud. In 2018, Voyager 2 followed suit and was also said to have left the solar system. So which definition is right? Well, the Oort cloud remains theoretical, but technically, it does better fit standard definitions of the solar system. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the solar system is the sun together with the group of celestial bodies that are held by its attraction and revolt around it. NASA describes it as our star, the sun, and everything bound to it by gravity. The heliopass marks the end of the sun's stream of charged particles, but not its gravitational pull. In the end, there are several different ways to define our solar system, and marking the exact edge comes down to what criteria you use. And that's where the solar system ends.
Don't go anywhere. We'll meet you after a short break. Welcome back to Science Lab. The signs are happening because Jesus is coming.
The universe is big, that much is certain. But it's easy to lose perspective of the object and distance at work when they reach a certain size because there's really nothing to compare them to. And yet, for a long time now, humanity has been trying in some way to measure its reality. The furthest man-made object from Earth is the Voyager 1 space probe. It was launched in 1977 to study the outer solar system. It is currently 20 billion kilometers away from Earth and traveling at 62,000 kilometers per hour. The transmitters used by the space network aren't powerful enough to reach and receive data from deep space satellites. For satellites this far away, we need something called the Deep Space Network in order to communicate. The Deep Space Network consists of antenna complexes at 3 locations around the world, in America, Spain, and Australia. These facilities are equally spaced 120 degrees apart on Earth. Each complex has a 70-meter antenna as well as 2 smaller high-frequency antennas. Satellites close to Earth typically use low-gain antennas which spread their signals in every direction, making it relatively easy to pick them up here on Earth. Satellites in deep space use high-gain antennas which focus their radio waves to achieve a much stronger signal strength once it reaches Earth. On September 21st, Japan's space agency made history. It became the first country to land not 1 but 2 rovers onto the asteroid. Already the unmanned rovers have sent back the first image while on the surface. So far it's looking like there are no alien cities on its surface. But this mission called Hayabusa 2 could ultimately help solve one of the grandest scientific mysteries of all. Where did life on Earth come from? Scientists have been studying asteroids for years. NASA, for example, landed its NEAR Shoemaker spacecraft on asteroid Eros in 2001. But it's Japan's space agency that is the first to deploy a pair of rovers to explore an asteroid's surface. Japan launched the Hayabusa 2 mission in December 2014, so it's already been about 3.5 years in the making. The spacecraft rendezvoused with its target in June 2018, snapping a series of pictures that reveals the asteroid's shape. The asteroid of choice was 162173 Ryugu, or Ryugu for short. In Japanese, it refers to a magical underwater dragon palace. Now the asteroid flies through space around the Sun every 16 months, conveniently between the orbits of Earth and Mars, making it an ideal target for the mission If it all goes according to plan, we'll return a sample of the asteroid to Earth by the early 2020s. As the spacecraft flew closer to the asteroid's surface, it prepared to deploy its first 2 unmanned rovers. But these guys aren't your typical space rovers. They are slightly bigger than the size of a larger iPhone, measuring just 7 by 18 centimeters. And they won't be driving around on the asteroid surface, they'll be hopping. Japan designed the rovers with a spinning cylinder inside that gives the power to hop about a few meters at a time. This reduces the risk of getting stuck on the rocky, uneven surfaces. But it doesn't come without its own risk. Asteroids are relatively small and therefore have a weak gravitational pull. And even by asteroid standards, Ryugu is tiny. It's less than a kilometer across, making it no longer than a few city blocks. So if the rover hopped too high, they could potentially go flying off into space. The rover have already achieved their first hop. Now this may be the first time Japan has landed on an asteroid, but it won't be the last. These 2 rovers are just the first of the 4 that Japan aims to land on Ryugu. The other 2 rovers are scheduled to land within the next year. In the process, Japan hopes to collect and return a sample of Ryugu to Earth so that scientists can study it in more detail, looking for traces of water and organic material.
Never before in the history of mankind, we are discovering the depth of the universe, and we are about to understand the universe as a whole. Why are these strange things appearing all around the world? Lord Jesus Christ listed out the signs that will happen before His coming, and one of them is there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. Lord Jesus Christ not only said fearful sights will appear, but also great signs from the heaven.
All these show that what is mentioned in the Bible that are going to take place in the end times are taking place in our lifetime. We are living in the last days. Lord Jesus Christ is coming again very soon. Thank you for watching this episode. Don't forget to tune into Science Lab next time.
Send us photos, videos, and YouTube links which are worth sharing, and also send us your feedback to our email address sciencelab@angeltv.org. If you have missed any of the episodes, don't worry. You can watch it again and again in our Science Lab YouTube page. But don't forget to like, share, and comment on the video.
Ask your friends and relatives to watch the Science Lab so that they will know that we are living in the last days. Remember, signs are happening because Jesus is coming.
Maranatha.